And the gameplay actually gets kind of more elaborate as you go along. So this is our little creature here. This is like he swings around. And basically, he's just eating little food pellets right now. And right now there's very little challenge in the game. I'm basically making for food pellets to eat. But as I eat the food pellets, my little creature is growing over time. And what will happen in the cell game is that we're actually going to transition to many orders of magnitude as we grow up. And here, a couple more, you'll actually start seeing the camera pull back. And so the world itself actually kind of becomes a little more expansive. And creatures that were in the background layer now become the foreground layer. So we kind of get a premonition of things, that are out of depth of field, they're out of focus, that as we grow, they start kind of interacting with us. And this guy's about to do me, so I'm going to skip out of the song game. Okay. But anyway, over time, you basically are playing a single-cell creature. And then as you get larger and larger, you eventually kind of move out of the water and on land. And you become a more fully formed macroscopic three-dimensional creature. So the game starts with like the very simplest kind of two-dimensional Pac-Man-like dynamic. And then over time, it kind of then evolves, really. You're actually playing every generation of the species through evolution, up to a 3D, kind of a third-person eater kind of environment here. So here's my little creature. This was my cell, basically, after skipping way ahead here, but going through about 5 or 6 orders of magnitude. We're now up on land. It's this little kind of slimy slug thing. Now this world, I can do things like just stealthy. I have certain properties on my creature here. Now if I can look around, I might find something I can eat. Well, these are my guys, so I'll eat them. Now in the game, basically, at this point we were playing a very simple kind of game of evolution. And we have to eat, survive, reproduce. Now those guys are probably too big for me. Here's some small things over here. Now if I'm very stealthy, I might be able to sneak up on this little baby. I think the baby is very stealthy. And reproduce with it after eating a certain amount of points. So I'm going to cheat here and go ahead and reproduce. And when you reproduce, basically you go into the egg, and this is kind of the next level of the game. So we basically have this very simple little form here, but now we have a three-dimensional creature that I can kind of grab by a little thing here. It's very much kind of what you see is what you get out of here. We want it to feel very tactile, very toy-like. I can expand the spine here, manipulate it how I want. I can use the mouse wheel to kind of inflate and deflate it. And so we want this part to feel very much like play. We have to come up with metaphors for each part of the game. And then we have parts. And this is the mouth. I'm going to pull up this mouth here. And these are limbs. And we want the players to be able to kind of create anything they can imagine. So we didn't want to have a lot of preconditions kind of on what the creature had to do. So we're really expecting it to be these kind of amazing, weird creatures that players want to build. So I'm going to take this guy. Instead of putting hands on there, I'm going to put some mouths on his arms. Yeah. And we'll get him maybe one eye. And maybe a few legs. Now, what's happening here is we've built a very simple toy system that tries to interpret a lot of the player's intent. We're trying to build basically something that's like Maya for 10-year-olds. Roughly that amount of power, but yet far less kind of controls. And that involves the program kind of understanding a lot more about 3D objects and editing. A lot of these parts have like little more handles that can sit there and kind of stretch them across all these kind of different state spaces. And so each part actually represents several hundred kind of potential states. We'll get plugged in the device here. And let's give him another set of arms. There maybe. So you kind of get a sense here that I'm basically manipulating a little tinker toy system. They have the aspect of like Mr. Potato Head, aspect of clay, aspect of Legos. Let's give them some hands. And I can look on his tail. So basically, in about a couple minutes, I've created this 3D mesh. And the next step is to do the painting. So when I get to this, the program analyzes the topology of my creature. It looks at like where the spine is, where the legs, all the parts. And it knows so basically I can retexture the feature with one click. It's actually running procedures on this feature, and it understands where to put the shadows and stuff. This is normally something it would take a texture artist several days to do, that we've kind of reduced to a few hundred milliseconds. And so within about 3 minutes, I've created something that, is roughly kind of the quality that, a pixel artist used to spend several weeks creating. And now we have to bring this thing to life. The computer has no idea kind of what we built, but it has to analyze it. Now, before it can animate it, the computer will analyze things like where the legs are, the hands, and all that. And every feature that you make in this thing will move very uniquely. And so here I can see how it moves around, see how it might dance. I can also have it pose for a little screenshot. They take little snapshots of it here, and so a cute little photo album that I can then email to a friend. As well as kind of, how they bite, how it eats, stuff like that. So basically, the animation side of this, we're closing the loop where, the computer is dealing with building the mesh, building the texture, building the animation, kind of all on the fly procedurally. So the player, kind of just a few clicks, is creating kind of this interesting thing. And then once you create it, you bring it back to the game. And now depending on what I've built, it's going to behave very differently in the game. They have very different properties that I have to kind of interact with the world. And so I'll probably fight very differently. Ooh, this is the hatch. So this is the baby version of what I've just done. We actually run kind of a neonatal algorithm on it, so it has very big eyes and hands until it grows up here. Over time, we'll actually grow up and become an adult of our species. But in some sense, we want the computer to be totally focused on what the player's made. So not only is the player kind of making something in the game, but we want the player's creation to kind of be front and center. Here we're kind of, this is what our full-blown future looks like. Now, if we're looking for the little neighbors, if you recall, and find out the numbers of our species. Now, I'm going to skip way ahead here. And over time, what happens is you actually develop intelligence for these creatures, and you start managing whole tribes of them and then civilizations. And I'm going to kind of skip way ahead in the game and give you a sense of kind of what the whole world looks like. So we're going to skip ahead to what we call the space game. Eventually, they develop high enough technology to where they can build spacecraft and actually go out and see the entire view of the planet being involved on it at this point. In some sense, I want this game to be something that brings up a lot of interesting kind of issues for the player, out of real science, real world, all the way back from the entire history of life up to the future of life. Where might life go? Because I think if you look at the kind of non-biological universe, stars, planets, galaxies, and whatnot, they are interesting, but not nearly as interesting as life. When you look at kind of the effect life could potentially have on the universe, it's philosophically staggering. And I want the players to kind of trip across that. I went to school, in a Montessori school, as a kid, up to 5th grade, and after that, the rest of my education was basically downhill. And it wasn't until later that I started going back and kind of studying Maria Montessori and her philosophies and methods. And, really the basis of a lot of her educational philosophy was the idea that we should be able to build toys that players or kids play with, and they come to understand, they explore and discover the principles of the world around them by themselves. Rather than a teacher teaching them the Pythagorean theorem, you can actually discover it by just playing with blocks and develop an intuitive understanding of it. And so the games I make, I kind of think of in those terms as very elaborate Montessori toys. And I think of, how can I build a game where a player, in playing with it, is going to come across fairly interesting kind of issues in philosophy and science, things like the Copernican principle, or the Fermi paradox, or the anthropic principle. And that's kind of what this really is best understood as, is a philosophy tool that in playing with it, you kind of walk away thinking about the meaning of life, the future course that life might take, or how we even got here. But back to the game here. So we're kind of much later in the game here. This is the entire planet we've been playing on up to this point. This is our home planet. And so we actually evolved in this ocean and called out, and at some point started building, very primitive societies, tribes, and then whole cities. And so we have editors at every level. So I can, this is my little kind of